Oh. Wait. Wait, can you hear me? Let's see. I can't hear you, and my camera isn't working. Oh, there we go. I think I hear you. Yeah, okay. I can hear you now.
Okay, I just had to yeah. I did have my Bluetooth on a little bit earlier, so that sometimes that affects it.
I don't know. It just says I can't connect to my camera.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I will hold your face in my mind.
Perfect.
Okay. I just wanted to send out a quick little email because I usually try and send an invite email, but I had a bit of a situation that needed to be dealt with this morning. Random situations, generally ill-timed. When you're caregiving. I'll just say that. We'll just leave it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I don't know why. Okay, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yep.
Good. I have been working on getting my fall seedlings in the garden beds, just having to swap a lot of stuff around. And sorry, that was my dog. One of our garden beds we just discovered have the roots from one of our palm trees growing into it, because I transferred some seedlings into it and they just weren't growing. And I was like, that's so interesting. I've never had something that's just like stunted growth in a garden bed. And we were gonna, replenish the soil and get it all fixed up for the fall veggies. And then we realized how many roots had gotten into that garden bed.
No.
Yeah.
So is there there's not an easy remedy, but is it remediable?
I think it's like a temporary remedial type thing where we've done about like half of it so far, because I still had 2 tomato plants in there that are producing. So I was going to leave them and replace the other side. But I can tell the roots are all down under there too. So we have to get all the soil out, cut out the roots, and then I don't know if we should, it doesn't have a bottom, so that's probably a big issue. But if we put in some wood and some cardboard, that'll keep them at bay for a little bit, but eventually we'll have to do the same thing again because the roots will come back in.
And are they like pulling the wood up or distorting? Like, how did you notice there was a problem?
It's just, well, they're just everywhere in the soil.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, they're probably, and we notice a lot of dry pockets where we have this solar irrigation system set up in there, and it's great. But it was surprising to see how much of the soil was dry underneath. And we just thought about the roots being attracted to, water and nutrients, that they're likely sucking up a lot of the water and nutrients away from the rest of the plants, which I assumed is why the 3 little kale seedlings I put in there weren't growing. So, and then I was looking it up online, and people were saying like roots are like the worst thing that can get into your garden box, and there's really nothing you can do unless you want to cut the tree down. And I was like, I'm not going to cut my tree down. So, well, I think like we have 2 others that are raised and on wheels that have a bottom. So I'm hoping once we put a bottom on this one, maybe it'll, I don't know, keep them at bay a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I guess, I mean, it would definitely be better to be planting, to be growing. I think, I would assume it'd be better to be growing in a bed without, roots come, obviously ingress through the bottom. And I think you can keep them at bay to some extent. I'm not convinced about how much roots are stealing water necessarily, because roots also give off a lot of things too. So those could also be like pumping some nutrients back into your soil. And
Interesting.
I'd really have to do deeper reading on that to find, like, if it's, they might be pumping a little bit into the soil, but like the net loss of water is still, because plants transpire a lot. So,
Right.
a huge palm tree is going to be transpiring more because it's big, but they're also very drought tolerant plants. So like those leaves are not made to, they don't give off a lot of moisture. So I'm not sure. I'm curious about what the actual, like the hydrological mechanics of, say, a palm tree is really like relative to, say, a fruit tree.
Yeah.
How much water they're actually giving off and losing, which would be directly influencing how much water they're taking up. And I know they store a lot of water, like the wood is actually really wet when if you ever cut into them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Certainly they make it much harder, to plant into the ground. But in terms of raised beds, I'm not sure how much kind of stealing they actually do. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of gardeners that would kind of shout me into the ground on that. But
I feel like there's a lot of differing opinions about just like plant communities working together under the soil, like there's people who will even say like leave your weeds, like the weeds could be helping your other, provide nutrients to other plants, or so I guess it depends on the perspective. And I imagine like if they were in the ground, I don't think I would have an issue, and it's not something I ever thought of before. But I guess my only thing was that those 3 seedlings did not grow at all. Like not even a little bit, but they didn't die. They weren't wilting. They were, I was just confused as to like there wasn't any pests on them. So I'm just like, what other reason would there be for them not to grow at all? Unless I just kept them in their original little seedling containers too long before transplanting them. But I don't know.
Were they, when you took them out, was there a lot of roots wound around? Like, were they kind of root bound?
No, they weren't.
Okay. Because usually that's the biggest telltale of, like, having been left in the pots too long, is that the roots the roots are all wound around the pot. But if that's, and they transplant relatively well. Like squash plants, a lot of the cucurbits don't transplant. They don't like to be moved kind of once they're really up and growing. So you want to get them in when they're young. But as far as I know, like the brassicas are pretty tolerant to transplanting at any point.
Yeah, it's just so, I mean, that's the fun of gardening, It's like,
right.
Why is this happening? Who knows?
Yeah.
A lot of trial and error.
Do you have other kale plants somewhere else that are doing a lot better?
Yeah, and so I had a bunch of kale that I planted from seed all at the same time. 3 of them I transferred at one point because I had room, and then I transferred another these 3 second into this main garden bed that I have. And those are the ones that didn't grow. And then I had 3 more that I planted in the next garden bed that I had open up, and those have taken off way more than the other ones. I mean, the other ones I ended up just giving up on because I was like, I mean, it's been a month, like weeks, and nothing has happened.
So I'm sorry, where did you plant the ones that took off into? What did you plant them into?
In a separate garden bed. I have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So similar dynamic, but like not likely to have any roots or something that like.
They don't have any roots. Yeah. And it was, I guess it was fresher soil, and I added compost, and I did some fertilizer down at the bottom of the hole before I planted them. And I did something similar when I planted the 3 that didn't grow and added fresh soil and compost and all that too, which is another reason that I was just shocked that nothing happened.
Yeah.
And they were getting sun and
What kind of a palm is it? Do you know?
I think it's either a king palm or a queen palm. I kind of get the two confused.
Okay.
But
Oh,
they
so like
have
the sago palm, is it like one of the short?
they're pretty tall. They
Okay.
have those orangey kind of nut fruits that
Mm-hmm.
drop down, and then they have these really big plumes of yellowy kind of
Flowers, like the.
flower. Yeah, and I wouldn't even call them flowers. They're like kind of like a wheat color, and they sprinkle everywhere over our patio. But yeah, they're probably about 20 or 30 feet high at this point.
Okay. I've never really clarified the difference between the queen palm and the king palm. So here I am like reading articles like king palm
Yeah,
versus queen palm. What's the difference? Um,
I know one of them is really toxic to dogs if they eat the.
okay, so like a sago palm, which I see some of the images are tagged as a king palm. Okay, so the queen palm is also referred to as a cocoa palm, even though it doesn't grow cocoa. Okay. Um,
Let's see.
oh, the king palm has a smooth, multicolored trunk.
Definitely smooth. I don't know about multicolor.
Yeah. I would really have to, I need to like, well, I need to look at this more closely to,
Yeah, let's see.
yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm looking. The king palms look like they have really skinny. Okay, it's also a medicinal cannabis brand, so I'm getting like joints and pictures of
Okay,
the palm.
I'm going completely by Latin names now, so here's,
Oh, that's great.
I'm just gonna drop it into the chat. So, okay, so queen palm. First, if I'm gonna nag on people about capitalizing Latin names, I better do it in the chat here. And then king palm, like constantly coming across new picture. I'm like, oh, I should write a blog post on this. Like you guys, there's just so many great questions that come up in these conversations. Okay, let's see what images.
Okay, it looks like the
Yeah.
king palm has this kind of green portion underneath the
See,
frond.
the king palm that I'm looking at, the Archonta Phoenix, looks an awful lot like what's in our backyard, which my husband's been is the plant guy, has been calling the queen palm.
Okay, I'm looking at a queen palm now, and I think ours is a queen palm.
Okay, well, let's go with
Just
that.
based off of looks.
Okay, so the question I had, which started me off, was I wanted to see if they're allelopathic. Because that's generally what's happening when you see like, oh, something's growing and nothing else is growing around it. Because we cut out a big Dracaena palm.
What's that term again?
Allelopathic. So basically it means that they put the roots, usually the roots, but sometimes like it's in the leaves and seeds and it can really vary, puts out some sort of a compound that reduces other plant growth. So it's basically, it's common in like trees that grow really slow, because they basically eliminate competition at the ground so that the seedlings can get started.
Do you know examples of
Yeah, black walnut is a really good example.
Interesting. Also, do you know what makes soil hydrophobic?
Well, yes, it gets too dry.
And
Basic,
like once it gets too dry, it's difficult to get it moist again?
yeah, exactly. So then once it does get too dry, then you need to just like water it a little bit at a time.
Okay.
And so like a little bit can soak in. If you get like a layer of mulch over it, then the mulch will soak up some of the water and then that'll start like hydrating the soil on top and it'll kind of gradually work its way down. But
Nice.
that's
Okay.
generally, yeah, the approach is kind of watering it slowly so that, so that it can start absorbing a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing anything about allelopathy in either of these palm articles that I'm reading. So
Oh, that's good. Okay.
um,
I was also curious to know because I don't when we redid the garden, this specific bed in the springtime, I didn't like dig up all the old soil. I just kind of mixed in new and compost and fixed it up a bit. And I'm curious if the roots had been in there then or if this is a newer thing. Like how long have they been in there? Because I that would have been helpful to know. Because everything grew fine up until I transplanted those 3 kale plants.
what did you have planted in there before?
I had some rainbow chard and I had 2 cucumbers. And the cucumbers were still producing. I was surprised. They had like 2 or 3 more fruits before we took them out. And that was like just a couple weeks ago. And the chard grew like crazy.
Hmm.
And the tomatoes too, which was really shocked because they're like a dwarf variety and they grew to be like 3 or 4 feet tall.
Yeah. Okay. So your cucumber. Okay. What might have happened? Wait. No, but you said you added more compost and more soil when you planted the.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So my
Yeah.
first thought was like, what might have happened because tomatoes and tomatoes and squash are both. Pardon me. Both very nitrogen loving. Like they use up a lot of nitrogen.
Hmm.
Soil can get depleted in nitrogen, but you said you got a lot. Did you get a lot of tomatoes, or just the plants grow like crazy?
Oh yeah, we got a ton of tomatoes.
Okay, and they ripened.
Yeah.
Were they any good?
Yeah, they were delicious.
Okay, so you might have run into like a phosphorus depletion.
Mm.
Um, I'm pretty sure it's phosphorus because this is just going back to a conversation that I remember with oh, not Zach Bush, it's the Mennonite guy, John Kempf. Um, so John Kempf has done some like crazy rabbit holing on like plant nutrients and stuff. He's got, I think it's just the Regenerative Agriculture podcast. Um,
Oh.
yeah, really good information. And he's gone deep into like soil biology, like from the nutrient side. Um, Tons of information, really, really good stuff. He does really interesting interviews with like, yeah, with really a wide variety of people. Anyway, I remember him talking about basically what it boils down to is if you've got a lot of green growth, you've got over nitrogen, if you've got a lot of you've got too much nitrogen in and it's in a balance with phosphorus. So that might be something. Yeah, it might just be a matter of rebalancing. Did you have the same, like kind of the same planting order in the other beds that you're seeing the kale do fine in?
No, actually I have the kale with broccoli and calendula flowers in the other one. And then the second one is they were really spread apart because I didn't have anything to like fully complete that garden bed. So it was just a random cabbage on one side that was actually from the grocery store that started sprouting. So I just stuck it in there. And then the 3 kale on like the far side where there was really nothing in the middle. But the
Okay.
broccoli and the kale, and that one are doing really fantastic. I have a broccoli crown that's happening right now, and it's just beautiful. It's burgundy.
That's great. Okay.
I also did not know that broccoli got so tall. It's like 3 feet
Mm.
tall.
Hmm.
This was my first time doing it, so yeah.
Okay, well, I guess if it was me, what I would be doing is I'd be trying to add in, you could add in either just like a bone meal, which would really basically be adding in like calcium and phosphorus back in. Um,
Okay.
you can add in like animal manure will do it if you've got a source for that.
Yeah, we have a lot of chicken poop.
Okay, yeah, so try that. And or you try a little bit of all of it. If you get organic compost from a different source, because
Okay.
one of the things with using are you using your own compost or are you buying it?
Own compost, and then sometimes I take some home from LA Compost, so it's from like those community gardens, and
Oh yeah, okay. So that's gonna have
yeah,
a good variety. Because sometimes what happens is when we're using just our own compost, we're kind of just like running the same wheel of depletion. So like,
yeah,
if we're short on, for instance, phosphorus, and we're using the same compost over and over again, we're never gonna get that back in unless we're adding something to it. So that's
yeah.
a place to start and just try, just see if that helps or that works, with your, I don't know, whatever your next transplants into it.
Okay, yeah, and I had a squash and another cucumber that I was wanting to put in there, and
Mhm.
I know I'm like I need to get that squash in ASAP because
Okay.
it's really more of a warmer weather type deal, but you know,
Yeah, okay, so if you're adding squash, definitely make sure you're getting your, like, all your stuff and not just the phosphorus up again, because that squash is gonna take up a lot of nitrogen
okay, good to
also.
know.
I mean,
I
it
do have
helps.
a liquid fish base fertilizer stuff that Neptune's
Mhm.
net I don't remember the actual name of it, but I have that. And I usually just use it on my indoor plants like maybe once every other month.
Okay.
But I guess I could try to use that on the outdoor plants too
Yep,
as a
you can,
liquid fertilizer.
yeah.
'Cause for the most part with fertilizing, I just use compost
Mhm.
every, month or so, just adding a little layer underneath or
Right,
at the base.
yeah. Well, that, I mean, that's where I would go, is I would try something, yeah, like, try something animal-based and, like, kind of a little more rich on the kind of rich more, I guess, more rich on the nutrients as, like, a supplement rather than, like, a whole balanced compost, because it sounds like you've got something that's out of balance. And that would be my guess is that's where I would start anyways, like adding something that's going to be phosphorus rich.
Okay. I have a box of that. I don't know if it's 333. It's one of the seedling starter what am I trying to say? Fertilizer kits.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Hmm.
I guess I could try that too, but I thought it was kind of more for starting seeds.
Yeah.
But I always forget that I have it, so I actually haven't really tested it out.
Hmm. Yeah, I get my caution with those is always like they're supercharged, right? So you always want to
Yeah.
make sure it's balanced with what else you're putting in, or uh,
Yeah, I could throw off something else if I add in.
yeah, and just getting like plants dependent on that rather than really taking it out of your soil. But it's the thing, like for annuals, I mean, you're kind of restarting, starting the cycle every time you're planting things in. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
okay.
Okay, cool. This is all helpful.
Yeah.
Little gardening chat.
Hmm. How are you feeling about the next assignment coming up? The microclimate.
I mean, I feel okay. Honestly, I've just watched all the video content and I'm like halfway through the reading.
Okay.
So I'm gonna take a look at it now because I haven't really had the chance to look at what the actual assignment is entailing outside of knowing that it's about microclimates.
Okay. Well,
And I think I might have to make another trip to my site to be sure I'm getting all of those documented.
oh, you're not on your site. Okay.
Yeah, so, my friends, they live up in North Hollywood, and I'm down in Culver City, so it's, like,
Oh, I
anywhere
see.
from, like, a 35 to hour drive depending on
Yeah,
traffic, you know?
yeah.
And
Okay,
it's
so
great
that's
because
fine.
they're best friends, so I usually make a hangout out of it,
Nice.
but it's not the most convenient to just, like, bop over there for a few minutes.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, now I remember. Yeah, yeah. Brittany and Zach.
Brittany and Zach, yes, they just got
Yeah.
back from their very long overdue honeymoon. They got married in
Aw.
2019, and then obviously with the pandemic, and then they had other
Mm.
life things get in the way. They were finally able to go. And they went to New Zealand.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's like,
Nice.
let's move there.
Okay.
Okay, so
Mm,
plant species map, draw over it. I mean, so far it looks pretty
I think it's a pretty straightforward one.
self-explanatory.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay. I think that one of the things that gets people hung up sometimes, especially with like small urban sites or suburban sites, um,
yeah,
is the zone, like the zones, because
okay,
often in a suburban site, you may only have a zone 1 and zone 2, maybe a zone
yeah,
3, like there's a little corner that, oh, we don't go there very often. So then like zones 4 and 5 can be like a wild space or like a park that's off the property, but like you go to, you would go to or consider as like inspiration or like for information about successional patterns or certain like native species, stuff like that. So that's kind
yeah,
of what
okay,
I often recommend for zone 4, zone 5. Um, zone 1, especially in a warm, I don't know if I'd say actually, especially some people keep zone 1 actually like including the house because they use their house as such a through, a kind of an epicenter of like moving things, moving nutrients or moving things around. Like it's especially true, I think, if you have a gray water system or a composting toilet, or you've got like mushrooms indoors or anything like that. So it's
yeah,
really it's quite subjective. I think most students probably leave zone 1 just as like the land area, but it doesn't. It's very much like what you decide to do and how you decide to interpret it. It's just sort of mapping the zones out the same way in the terms of like relative use. Um, so just understanding that they're not hard and fast rules. They're really like, okay, what do you use the most frequently is going to be your zone 1, and what do you use the least frequently is going to be your zone 5, and where does everything else fall in the middle? And it can change.
gotcha.
I mean, some people do a zone 0 for the actual house, and then then you get into like zone 0, 0, where it's like your spirit, yourself, your spirituality, or whatever. And I'm like, you can do whatever you want, but
Going very
yeah,
deep inward.
yeah, zone X, yeah. So
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then for zone 5, could it even go as far as out like to the foothills or like hiking trails, kind of stuff like that? Or is that maybe too far out?
no, I think that would be a great example of like how you can get that nature connection from your site, because it's still related to the site, right? Because you're going to make those, you or they are going to make those decisions based on their site, like how far is it to drive? Do you have to make this an overnight trip? And so that's all related to the
Yeah.
site. It's just not physically on the property. So that's a good
Yeah.
thing. Mhm.
Okay, foothills or okay, cool.
And then good old SWOT analysis, nothing new there. Yeah,
Yeah, and then okay, for the SWOT analysis, it's like, each one pertains specifically to the assignment, but I find that I mean, I feel like I'm just kind of repeating myself a
mhm,
lot when it comes
mhm.
to that. Is that like a normal
Very.
thing? Okay,
Yeah,
it's like,
and yeah, it's very
"What
normal. And
is saying is
no,
hot."
that's fine. Where the things that you repeat, I think are good markers. And we've talked about this amongst the other instructors or amongst ourselves. The things that get repeated are the things that bear repeating. So they're the most prominent, like, we see in our climate a lot of like fire risk, a lot of drought risk, heat, strong winds, stuff like that. So those are the things that you really want to be making sure that you've addressed in your design in your design process, in all of that, those are going to be the things that are jumping out to you over and over again. No, there's a balance between like, okay, our risks are drought, fire, strong winds, whatever, droughts, fire, and flooding in in the rainy season. Like, okay, but from the perspective of your current zones, do you have a zone 1 that's actually like relatively flood resistant, or it's like it's already well planted? Like, that's going to be a strength. Your zone 5 might have a weakness in that it's already showing like a lot of erosion issues, or it's in a high wildfire risk area, stuff like that. So you could look at it like from the strengths and weaknesses or opportunities of specific zones. You could also look at it as like you've got an opportunity to expand into another zone, or like you've got an opportunity to expand your zone 1, or make like a zone 3 into zone 2 by creating like a seeding zone, or planting beds that are going to draw people into that more.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you're saying like zone 3s could be seating areas that are perhaps further out from the home, or like, my site has a covered patio in the back where we hang out a lot by the pool, but then they've talked about, of course, that little outdoor office that Brittany wants to have, but then maybe like a little seating area with a fire pit back there. Would that be considered something that's more zone 3 or still zone 2?
I would guess that would probably be a zone 2.
Okay.
Because if you're increasing the pleasantness of that space and like making more of a draw, then I think they would find themselves using it more than just like on a weekly or monthly basis.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And using it might even just be like, oh, passing through, or like, oh, I came out to like sit and read a book for 20 minutes or something. It doesn't have to be, there's a fire pit there, we use the fire pit. Like, that might only happen, who knows, like even once a month in the summer. It could still be zone 2 because it's like a high pass through area. So it's kind of like more thinking about like how often are eyes, and attention on this space, rather than necessarily using it like for what it was designed for.
Right. Okay.
Again, it's that subjective, like it's going to depend, but I think a nice seating area with a fire pit, I think for me, I would classify that as a zone 2.
Ready. It's okay.
Zone 3 for us in an urban set in a suburban setting has been like material storage. We've got kind of a corner of the property that is, we've got like stacks. Stack sounds like junkier and messier than it is, but like we've got all our fence pickets stacked, our like garden pots, stuff like that. So we really only use those like in the spring. So it's more of a zone 3 because like we pass by it on a regular basis, but we really don't use any of that area more than a couple times a month maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking, so on their polar facing side, they have a small walkway that there's a gate next to the garage in the front that you can enter, and a lot of us go through that whenever we're going to their pool with a second gate. But really that area, they have like a really small shed, but other than that, I feel like it's only used to pass through with would that be something that's more zone 3? Because I don't think design wise there would be anything, there wouldn't be a reason for them to just start hanging out on the side of their house.
Yeah, okay, so that sounds like a good fit for like zone 2.5 or zone 3 is probably, yeah, even just to like provide an example of like, yeah, it's not going to be a zone 5, but it's like, what's your least used area is probably going to be a zone 3. Doesn't have much attraction to it. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, it was really the video. I forget the instructor's name, but the woman who has her roof built out in Portland, and
Oh,
she could
okay.
hang out up there, and she was talking about microclimates and how it's a different microclimate up on the roof.
Mm.
And it was so interesting because my husband, I mean, maybe it's not a joke. I think he's maybe serious, but he's talked about putting stuff up on the roof. And I've always thought of how, I don't know how convenient it would be because we have, a ladder to get up onto the roof.
Hmm.
But I just thought that was such a great way for someone to utilize like all of the available space they have to
Yeah, yeah.
hang out or whatever.
Yeah, well, and I think what you find is as you get more into this, I mean, we're constantly finding, finding or scheming about a new way to use a space. And yeah, the roof is sort of like so far untouched real estate.
Yeah.
For the most part, we've definitely got plans for like a catwalk and like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have like a little patio space up there? Because once you've got a patio space, you can plant it and you can grow more plants, and it's like kind
Yeah.
of becomes addictive, right? But yeah, definitely like like roof area seating, especially when you've got a view to enjoy, like why not? So
Yeah, I mean, it's seeming like our roof is getting to like the last few places to get a little bit of a view because we've got these bigger buildings being, built all around us, starting to block out
mhm.
all the views. But I wondered about the weight of things on a flat roof. Like, how much can a roof withhold?
that
You know,
that is where, yeah, you have to be subjective about it, but or careful, yeah. That is where I think, I don't know that I would say like go out and get an architect to assess it, but if you can befriend an architect, at least like give you an idea of like either A, whether or not this is a good idea to at least to even pursue, um, or how you would go about assessing that. Um,
yeah,
because as long as you've got, as long as you've got the support of load bearing walls, but I'm not an architect, I'm not in construction, like, I kind of want to stop there because I'm not. um, but yeah, talking to people in construction that like and trust. Um,
yeah. We actually are very lucky, and one of our best friends just so happens to be an architect, a new architect. He just got his
okay.
master's a couple years
Oh,
ago.
wow. Yeah,
And before that, it was all construction management. So I'm sure he would have some good
yeah,
insight. But I guess my other obstacle is the fact that we rent this place. So it's like, okay, how much do we want to invest in this? Like, how much longer are we going to be here? You never know. And
yeah.
that's
We talk about that. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. The other thing is that what does that depend on? What does how long you're there depend on?
gosh, I guess it just depends on how much longer we want to be here.
Are
There's
you
no
like,
like reason for us to move outside of wanting more space. But what's difficult is the space that we have now offers us so much in terms of ability to garden outside and keep the chickens. And we have this detached garage that is great for this outdoor office situation. It's just like the physical inside of our house is very quaint and small. And
okay?
sometimes I just get cabin fever. So
Uh-huh. Okay.
and also, it's like, I think about moving to the east side or closer to Pasadena because I feel like it's closer to a lot of the organizations that I want to be involved with. Um, but moving is a lot. It's a big undertaking and it's expensive, and we have a great deal now.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
there's no timeline for us to stay here, and there's no timeline for us to leave.
Okay. You're kind of in that like little bit of like a messy middle, like the
Yeah.
industry.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
we're so
Okay.
comfortable here and we built it up. We've been here for geez, like 7 years. So it's very, very homey.
Mm.
But I'm also somebody I really enjoy change and I like exciting
Mm-hmm.
things that come with change. So I go through phases of like, God, we gotta move. But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Um, do you want me to offer my thoughts on that?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
I guess if you're in the office hours, that's why you're here. But I
Yeah.
hesitate to be like, I didn't want to talk over you before I had a little more like understanding of what that looks like for you. But one of the things that we've like repeatedly run into is this realization of like, oh, we didn't realize how long we were going to be here. If we'd known how long we were going to be here, we would have started the things that we'd wanted to start, that we still want to start, that we haven't started yet.
Yeah.
So, and my husband has an example of when he moved up to Sonoma County like 2 decades ago. He thought he was only going to be there for a year, so he didn't take the search and rescue training that he really wanted to. Well, then the following year, he thought he was, oh, I'm probably only going to be here for another year. So he ended up being there for 7 years, right? And
Wow.
they made a commitment that
Yeah.
you were like committed to being in the area for like 5 years, right? So it totally would have worked out. And we've kind of run into the same thing here. Like I moved down to California in 2016. And at that point, we were like, yeah, we'll probably be here for like a couple of years, right? Because we're in a caregiving situation. Neither of us had any interest or desire to be in Southern California, or like at least in a suburban setting for any length of time, let alone, as long as either of us have been. But I've been here for almost going on 8 years now. And it's like, I guess the flip side, we're not renting. Like my husband will own this home when his mom passes. So, we've got a different level of like investment to consider for sure. But at the same time, when you invest that energy and the time in early on, you get to learn in the situation you're in, and then it's not like that learning goes away. It's not like the example goes away. You can always take that somewhere else with you.
Yeah.
And I look back on, I'm like, I could have completed like 3 more master's degrees since I've been here. Not that I would have wanted to, and not that I could have paid for them, but there was so much that I feel like I look back and I'm like, oh, I didn't start that because I didn't know if we were going to be there the following year or like in a couple of years, or it wasn't convenient or whatever, blah, blah, blah. We tell ourselves a lot of stories, but what I'm continually reminded by is like everything that we've started, we've like continually adapted. And now it's like a learning example that we can look back on, and like other people are interested. So, everything that we've started has been worth starting, even if we're not doing it anymore, even if like, even if it felt like wasted time and effort at the time, we're like, well, we sure wouldn't do it that way again. And other people see it, and you get like more people pulled into the community. Like there's always a benefit from doing it. And I've yet to see a benefit from like sitting and waiting until you're in the perfect position. And I say that from being a person that has like habitually sat and waited until I'm in the perfect position or perfect timing or perfect thing, and that just never happens. I think when you're in a rental, you're also almost in a better position, especially when you've got a good landlord, because you're not like, you can't wreck the place, obviously, but you're not committed to like, oh, I have to live with this forever because I own this place. And you never have to live with anything forever. You can always sell it. You can always like, dismantle and start over. But I think a rental is kind of a fun, like if you've got the leeway and you've got, like the green light from your land person, it's a fun way to play without the same like level of commitment that I think when you own like.
Oh, I have a question. I'm terrible with just gating footage.
Okay, what's your oh, sorry.
Like our front landscaping, like the portion that's the between the sidewalk and our fence, we just used propagated plants that we found like in an alleyway, or our neighbor gave us like a stalk of sugar cane and we chopped it up and stuck it in there. So because we want to keep our costs down, basically, because we don't know if we're gonna stay, if they're gonna take it out when we leave, all that. But yeah, it's a good little size patio outside.
Okay, what was the number again?
Sorry, it's 3147 South.
It's like 2421. I got it completely wrong.
Yes, South Halm with an H.
Oh, Halm, South Halm.
Yes.
I heard you say H, and I was like, okay. South Halm Avenue.
Yes.
And is it actually it's under LA, correct?
Yeah, it's in LA.
Oh, you're in the belly of the beast. Wow.
Yeah, right there
Okay,
I am.
no, I want.
Oh yeah, you can see the.
Okay. Wait, is that whole yard yours?
The front portion, yes, but the side, that's like an alleyway, and then our detached garage is at the very back on that left-hand side. And that's a little avocado
Oh,
tree on the left tree.
this
And
is
then
this is on the
that pit here is it's now a two-story apartment complexes on that lot.
Oh, on here. This is now.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's
Oh, so you don't
all.
have that to play with. Bummer.
I know, right? Would have been awesome.
Yeah.
It used to be a one-story single family house. So, I mean, great to have more housing. I
Sure.
was just sad at the height of it because it blocks the evening sun, you know?
Yeah.
Just to get
Yeah.
that nice sunset view and then all the sun coming in from that direction in the evening time. But anyway, so
Oh, oh, oh.
our our place is the front unit.
Oh, cool Earth.
Oh
Okay.
yes,
Oh,
Google
it's
Earth.
so insane. It's like I don't want to. I want close. I don't want that close. Come on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, so go on.
So yeah, we have it's a 3-unit triplex and we have the front unit. So that's how we have that nice fenced in patio space
Gotcha. Okay.
where yeah, we have the garden beds and all that.
So each of these flat roofs is a unit?
Yes.
Interesting.
And that's ours, the one that you just hovered over.
Is the middle one? No, the front.
No, we're the front, yeah.
So then you have that front place to play with?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And then the side there are cypress trees, which they do block the sun in the wintertime. It's been a little bit more of a struggle.
They're also
Because this is the first year I'm like carrying through a garden. I normally take it out at like, this time, and then it's just sitting there with nothing in it until, March or April of next year. So this is my first time growing through the winter season. So I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to pan out.
okay. So that's basically your block.
Yeah.
So you got about 439 square feet.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So cypress are big water hog. It's so funny that people plant them here. This is taking up all my bandwidth, so I'm gonna close that down.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can take those out. Those are good to get rid of.
They probably not. I mean, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of a block.
Mhm.
And we've got squirrel families that live in there. And I don't know in terms of like with our landlord rules and stuff if they
Yeah.
would want us to mess with them. But the issue is there's a power line that goes directly above them. So we have to trim them. I mean, they've brought people out to trim them before, but they started to like whack them off like a little flat top, and we were like, wait, no, don't do that. So we just, when I say we, I mean my husband goes out and trims them for us. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, I didn't know about them being water hogs, but I don't care for them. Like I don't water them. We don't pay attention to them. We will when we trim them, we keep the branches to let them dry out and become mulch, but that's basically all we get out of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for a better, I mean, I think like Feijoa makes a really nice hedge. I don't know. Are you familiar with Feijoa?
Uh-uh.
We call it a pineapple guava.
You know if it's good in really high heat areas? Because
Yeah.
I'm looking for some hedges for my site to do some privacy blocking from the
Mhm.
neighbors.
Yeah, so Feijoa would be a good one. Yeah, so they also call it pineapple guava. What's the other one? Oh, Natal plum is one I like because it's really thorny. So it's a good like get away from me hedge.
Nice.
I'm trying to see what the species name is for this. Carissa macrocarpa. And the fruit's tasty. So both of these have tasty fruit.
Oh, that's always a bonus.
The Natal plum is actually a really common one for a hedge. It's just most people don't go out and eat it. But it's got these like, I don't know, very large olive-shaped, kind of pinkish reddish fruits on them, and they're really sour. They've kind of got a weird like latex stuff in them. So if they're just like a little bit underripe, you get this like weird kind of like acerbic, but they're really tasty.
That's good to know.
Yeah, that's the thing with so many of like these fruits that like aren't commonly grown. It's like, oh, that's why it's not common, or like
yeah, it's like,
traveler. But those are a couple examples. You can also like ficus hedges. There's something a friend of mine was telling me about. There's something. Yeah, they're really popular. They're not good as an animal feed, but I think they'd be okay in compost. I gotta find out some of the because we went on a property consult together, and she had all these like details about ficus hedges that I was like, okay, we need to just like sit down and download this, because it was just like there was a lot of detail about like, you know, when you need to cut them and what, you know, whether or not you can feed them, and I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
the feijoa and the Natal plum I think are good like fruit bearing, what we call fedges.
Great. And do you know what the maintenance level is for those?
They're kind of like any kind of a hedge. I mean, they're, you know, you got to trim them. The feijoa is definitely going to take, it's more like a tree that you trim into like a shrub. So it's definitely going to take longer to fill in.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And the Natal plum grows like short and dense kind of as a growth form. So
sweet. Awesome. There's just so much information to absorb.
There really is. I know, and I try not to feel dumb every time. I'm like, well, I heard this like this guy on this podcast say this one time about this thing, and I'm like, basic gardening knowledge, you should know this. And I'm like, I'm the livestock person. I'm like, you know, I can like find you the right breed of duck, or like why you should raise these sheep instead of these sheep, or like,
yeah,
you know, all the other stuff. And it's like my zone of knowledge is just kind of in a different place because there's so many plant geeks. I'm like, I wish I was a plant geek.
yeah, I'm trying to become a plant geek, but there's so many to know. And it's like, you know, I think I have a grasp on something, and then someone asks me a question. I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, I think you have to get really comfortable with saying like, you know what, I'm not sure, but I think I know where to look. And then yeah. So
quick little search. But forever student, that's the fun part about this, is that there's always something to learn. It's always fascinating, and it never gets old, which is good.
No, it doesn't. Never. It can get
bored in the plant world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. Well, thank you so much. You are always such a great source of knowledge and help. And yeah, I appreciate all your feedback. I still need to watch my video for my assignment 3 feedback, but I did get in those missing elements for my sector map.
Oh, great. Okay.
I didn't even realize we had to put those in there, but I got them in.
I wish they made it a little more prominent, but yeah, it's not an uncommon thing, and it's like 1 mark. So I'm just like, hey, get this in and you'll get the extra mark, but it's not going to sink your grade if you don't. So it's up to you.
Okay. Well, I got them in.
Yay. Okay, I'll go check that right now then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for coming. Yeah, you got.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
One session. Usually I charge $300.
Yeah, like this is so nice. I mean, got a little advantage here.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, it was nice to connect with you. I'm sorry your video didn't work out. I'm sure.
Yeah, sorry. I wish mine was on. I'm here on the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
But anyways, have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Kate. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.